Elder Poland pressed his thin fingers against the communication device. His hands were shaking. Outside the broken walls of the temple, the sky was filled with enemy ships. The Krath had come 3 weeks ago, and they had shown no mercy. His people, the Volari, were dying. The Volari were a peaceful species. They had soft, glowing skin and bones made of crystal. They were beautiful, but they were weak. They had never learned to fight because they had never needed to. For thousands of years, they lived in harmony on their world called Sereth Prime. They built cities of light and created art that made other species weep with joy, but the Krath did not care about art. They cared only about conquest. Poland could hear screaming in the distance. He closed his large eyes and spoke into the device. His voice was tired and broken. "This is Elder Poland of Sereth Prime. We are under attack. The Krath Empire is killing my people. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We are not warriors. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we need help. Our children are dying. Please." He sent the signal into space, toward every world that might listen. Then he sat in the darkness and waited. He had sent messages before. To the Galactic Council, to the wealthy trading planets, to anyone who might care. No one ever came. The signal traveled across the stars. It passed through empty space and touched the communication arrays of dozens of worlds. On most planets, officials listened to the message and shook their heads. The Volari were too far away. The Krath were too strong. It was not their problem. On the planet Dross, a senator heard the recording and sighed. "Sad," he said. "But what can we do? The Krath would destroy us too." He deleted the message. On the station of Velmac, traders heard the screams of Volari children in the background of the signal. They felt uncomfortable for a moment. Then they returned to counting their profits. The Galactic Council received the signal and held a meeting. They talked for 6 hours about the importance of peace and the dangers of war. They decided to send a letter of concern to the Krath Empire. They knew the letter would be ignored. They sent it anyway, but the signal did not stop traveling. It kept moving through the darkness of space, getting weaker with every light year. After 17 days, it reached a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. It reached Earth in the city of Sol. Admiral Moon sat in the command center of United Earth Space Command. She was 53 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen many battles. When her officers played the signal for her, the room fell completely silent. They heard Poland's tired voice. They heard the explosions in the background. They heard a child crying for her mother. Admiral Moon stood up slowly. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were tight fists at her sides. "How far away is this planet?" she asked. 17 light years. "Admiral, at maximum speed, we could reach them in 17 days. "How large is the Krath fleet?" "Intelligence suggests over 100 warships, Admiral. We would be outnumbered 4 to 1. The room was quiet. Everyone knew what those numbers meant. It would be a hard fight. Some of them would not come home. Admiral Moon looked at her officers. "We leave in 6 hours. I want the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet ready to go. Every ship, every soldier, every pilot." Young officer raised his hand. "Admiral, the Galactic Council has advised non-interference. They say this is not our concern." Moon turned to look at him. Her voice was cold and calm. "I heard children screaming in that recording. That makes it my concern. That makes it humanity's concern. We do not ignore calls for help. Not ever." She turned to the rest of the room. "Move now." Within hours, the news spread across Earth. People gathered around screens to watch the fleet prepare. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. Pilots checked their ships one final time. Captain Kongte stood on the bridge of his ship, the UESC Iron Will. He was a tall man with a quiet voice and eyes that seemed to look through everything. His crew respected him because he was fair, and they feared him because he was unstoppable in battle. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Park Yuna, walked up beside him. She was young but brilliant, with a mind that could see patterns in chaos. Captain, I have finished studying the Krath forces. They outnumber us badly. Tay did not look away from the window. And they have never fought humans before, she almost smiled. They do not know what they are facing. In the cargo bay below, Sergeant Beak Jin gathered his ground team. He was built like a mountain, with scars on his arms and a voice like rolling thunder. His soldiers looked up at him with trust in their eyes. Listen carefully, Jin said. When we land on that planet, you will see things that will make you angry. You will see innocent people who have been hurt by monsters. When that happens, I need you to take that anger and use it. We are not just soldiers today. We are the answer to a prayer. Private Node, the youngest member of the team, raised his hand. Sergeant, why are we doing this? The Valari are strangers. They have nothing to give us. Jin looked at the young man for a long moment. Because they asked for help. Because no one else would answer. Because that is what humans do.
But
He put his hand on Day's shoulder. When you were a child and you were scared, you wanted someone to come and save you. Today, we are that someone for an entire world. Far across the galaxy, Warlord Grun of the Krath Empire received a report that made him laugh. An unknown fleet was approaching Sereth Prime, a small fleet from a small planet called Earth. Humans, his advisor said nervously. They are classified as Deathworlders, my lord. Their planet is extremely dangerous. High gravity, extreme temperatures, deadly predators. Grun waved his hand dismissively. Stories to scare children. No species is that strong. Let them come. We will crush them like we crushed the Valari on Sereth Prime. Hidden in the ruins of her home, a young Valari girl named Mira held a broken communicator to her ear. She had been listening to static for days, hoping for a voice, hoping for anyone. Then, through the noise, she heard something. A human voice. Calm and clear. This is the UESC Iron Will. We have received your distress signal. Hold on, we are coming. Myra did not know what humans were. She did not know why they would come when no one else would. But for the first time in weeks, she felt something warm in her chest. Hope the stars were cold and dark, but somewhere in that darkness, help was on the way. The Deathworlders were coming, and they would not be stopped. The fleet moved through the darkness of space at maximum speed. 17 days to reach Sereth Prime. 17 days to prepare for war. Captain Kangtae used every hour wisely in the medical bay of the Iron Will. Dr. Choi Hanna studied everything known about the Valari species. She was a gentlewoman with soft hands and kind eyes, but what she read made her heart ache. The Valari were fragile beyond anything she had imagined. Their bones were made of crystal and could break from a simple fall. Their skin was thin and tore easily. They could not survive in cold temperatures or hot temperatures. They needed perfect conditions just to live. A human sneeze near a Valari could give them deadly diseases. A friendly pat on the shoulder could shatter their bones. They are like glass, Hannah whispered to herself. Beautiful glass that breaks if you touch it too hard. Sergeant Beak Jin appeared at her door. He looked at the medical files on her screen. That bad? Hannah nodded slowly. When we arrive, I will need to be very careful. A human trying to help a Valari could kill them by accident. We will need special equipment, special training. Jin's face became hard. The Krath knew this. They knew how weak the Valari were. They attacked them anyway. He paused. No, they attacked them because they were weak, yes, Hannah said quietly. That is exactly why they attacked. In the training room, the soldiers prepared for ground combat. Private Node struggled to lift his combat armor. The suit weighed 80 kilograms, and his arms shook with effort. Sergeant Jin walked over and watched him. Having trouble? Day was embarrassed. The suit is heavy, Sergeant. I am not used to it. Jin helped him lift the armor onto his shoulders. Do you know why that suit is so heavy? Because it was built for humans. And do you know what makes humans different from every other species in this galaxy? Day shook his head. Gravity, Jin said. Earth has strong gravity. Very strong. The planet where the Valari live has gravity that is only 1/3 of Earth's. They walk lightly because their world is light. But we We grew up being pulled down by our world every second of every day. Our bones became thick and dense. Our muscles became powerful. That suit weighs 80 kilograms, but on Earth, you carried more weight than that just by existing. He stepped back and watched Day stand straighter. Most species in this galaxy evolved on gentle worlds. Worlds with weak gravity, stable weather, and few predators. Earth gave us none of those things. Our world tried to kill us every day, and we survived. That is why they call us Deathworlders. We came from a world of death, and it made us strong. Lieutenant Park Yuna sat alone in her quarters preparing her tactical plans. She thought about her grandmother, who had lived through great hardship many years ago. Her grandmother used to tell stories about survival, about people who never gave up, no matter how bad things became. Humans had a long history of fighting against impossible odds. They had survived ice ages and plagues. They had survived wars and disasters. They had looked at challenges that should have destroyed them and said no. Yuna remembered something her grandmother once told her. When humans first met alien life, they asked us how we survived on Earth. We told them we did not just survive our planet. We conquered it. She smiled slightly and returned to her work. The Krath had never faced a species like humanity. They were about to learn a hard lesson. On Sereth Prime, the Krath continued their destruction. They moved through cities and burned everything they found. They captured Valari and put them in camps. They did not see the Valari as people. They saw them as resources to be used and thrown away. Warlord Grun watched from his command ship in orbit. He was pleased with the progress. The Valari had no fight in them. They surrendered easily and cried beautifully. It was almost too simple. His advisor approached him with new information. "My lord, we have learned more about the humans who are coming." "Tell me," Grun said. "Not very interested. They are from a planet called Earth. The planet has gravity that is 3 times stronger than Srath Prime. The atmosphere contains a gas called oxygen at very high levels. Most species would find their world poisonous." Grun raised an eyebrow. "Go on. Their world has extreme temperatures. Parts of it freeze solid, and other parts become hot enough to kill. They have predators that hunt in groups. They have diseases that have killed millions of their own kind. They have natural disasters that destroy entire cities." The advisor paused, and yet they survived all of it. They became the dominant species on their planet. For the first time, Grun felt a small touch of concern, but he pushed it away. "Stories," he said. "No species is that resilient. They are trying to scare us with legends." "Perhaps," the advisor said. "But there is more. The humans have a strange behavior pattern. When they hear someone calling for help, especially someone weaker than them, they respond with extreme aggression toward the attacker. They do not calculate benefit or cost. They simply attack." Grun laughed, but the laugh sounded hollow. "That makes no sense. Why would any species risk themselves for strangers?" "I do not know, my lord." "But they are coming, and they are coming fast." In the ruins of her city, young Myra waited. She had heard the human voice on the communicator. She had heard the promise. But promises were easy to make and easy to break. Many people had promised to help the Valari before. None of them had kept their word. She looked up at the sky, at the Krath ships that blocked out the stars. She was hungry and scared and alone. Her family was gone. Her friends were gone. Everything she knew had been destroyed. But somewhere in the darkness between the stars, ships were coming. Humans were coming. Creatures from a world that tried to kill them every day. Creatures who had evolved to be strong, to be tough, to never give up. They were coming because she had asked for help. Mira did not understand it. She did not know why strangers from a distant world would care about her people. But she held on to hope like it was the only thing keeping her alive, because it was. On the iron will. Captain Tay stood at the window and watched the stars stream past. 15 days remained until they reached Sereth Prime. 15 days until the fight began. Lieutenant Yuna joined him. "The crew is ready," she said. "Morale is high. They believe in the mission." Tay nodded slowly. "They should. This is what we are meant to do." not conquer, not dominate, protect. The Krath will not surrender easily. Then they will not surrender at all. Tay turned to face her. We did not come here to negotiate. We came here to save people who cannot save themselves. And we will succeed, or we will die trying. There is no other option. Yuna looked at her captain with respect. The galaxy does not understand us. No, Tay agreed. But they will. After today, they will understand exactly what humanity is. And they will never forget. The fleet continued its journey through the dark, carrying hope toward a dying world. The third expeditionary fleet dropped out of hyperspace like wolves entering a sheep's field. 32 human warships faced 127 Krath vessels. The numbers were not in humanity's favor. But numbers rarely told the whole story. Captain Kang Tae stood on the bridge of the Iron Will, his eyes fixed on the enemy fleet. The Krath ships were large and impressive, built to show power and create fear. Human ships were different. They were smaller, darker, and built for one purpose only: war. All ships reporting ready, Captain Lieutenant Park Yuna said. Her voice was calm, but her fingers moved quickly across her console. The Krath are forming a defensive line around the planet. Tay nodded. Open a channel to the fleet. A moment later, his voice reached every human ship. This is Captain Tay. You know why we are here? You have seen what the Krath have done to innocent people. Today, we show them the cost of cruelty. Today, we remind the galaxy that when someone calls for help, humanity answers. He paused. All ships, weapons free. Show no mercy. They gave none. Warlord Grun watched the human fleet approach from his command ship. He smiled with confidence. His fleet was nearly 4 times larger. This would be easy. They're not slowing down, his navigator said, confused. They are accelerating toward us. Grun frowned. That made no sense. Any reasonable enemy would try to find cover or attack from a distance. These humans were flying directly at his fleet at full speed. They are fools, he decided. Prepare all weapons. Destroy them before they reach us. The Krath fleet opened fire. Bright energy beams cut through space toward the human ships. On any other species, these weapons would cause immediate destruction. The first beam hit the Iron Will directly in the front. The ship shook slightly, then kept coming. Grun stared at his screen. What? That should have crippled them. Sir, their ships are heavily armored. Much more than expected. Our weapons are having minimal effect. This could not be right. The Krath had conquered dozens of species. Their weapons were feared across the galaxy. But the human ships absorbed hit after hit and never slowed down. Lieutenant Yuna smiled grimly at her console. Their weapons are designed for normal ships. Ships built for comfort and style. Our ships are built by people who expected to be shot at. Human warships were different from every other vessel in the galaxy. Most species built ships with large windows, comfortable quarters, and elegant designs. Humans built ships with thick armor, redundant systems, and powerful engines. Where other species saw space travel as pleasant, humans saw it as survival. The Iron will reach the Krath line first. Tay gave one simple command. Fire. Oh. Human weapons tore through the first Krath ship like paper. The enemy vessel exploded in a ball of fire. Before the Krath could react, 2 more of their ships were destroyed. Grun could not believe what he was seeing. They are too fast. How are they moving like that? The answer was simple, but terrifying. Human pilots could survive forces that would kill any other species. When a ship turned sharply or accelerated quickly, it created massive pressure on the body. Most species could only handle small amounts of this pressure. Humans, with their dense bones and powerful hearts, could survive much more. Human pilots performed maneuvers that seemed impossible. Their ships spun and twisted through the Krath formation, always moving, always attacking. The Krath tried to target them, but the humans were never where they expected. On the Iron Will. The crew worked with perfect efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every person knew their job. Every system worked together. Enemy destroyer moving to intercept, Yuna reported. It looks like they want to ram us. Tay watched the massive Krath ship approach. Let them try. The Krath destroyer was 3 times larger than the Iron Will. It accelerated toward the human ship, planning to crush it with sheer mass. In the past, this tactic had worked against every enemy. Smaller ships always turned away or were destroyed. The Iron Will did not turn away. The 2 ships collided with tremendous force. The Krath destroyer's front crumpled like thin metal. The Iron Will shook hard, but its reinforced frame held together. Aboard the Krath ship, crew members were thrown across rooms. Aboard the Iron Will, humans in their reinforced suits barely moved. Damage report, Tay said calmly. Minor damage to forward sections. All systems still working. Tay looked at the crippled Krath destroyer floating in front of him. Finish them. 1 shot from the Iron Will's main cannon, and the enemy ship was gone. Across the battlefield, the story repeated itself. Human ships fought with a fury that the Krath had never seen. They did not stop when damaged. They did not retreat when outnumbered. They pushed forward with unstoppable determination. Warlord Grun watched his fleet being destroyed piece by piece. His confidence had turned to fear, and his fear was turning to terror. These are not soldiers, he whispered. These are monsters. His advisor stood beside him, trembling. Sir, we have lost 63 ships. We need to retreat. No, Grun shouted. We cannot lose to these creatures. Send all ships to attack their command vessel. Kill their leader. 20 Krath ships turned toward the Iron Will. They fired everything they had. The human ship was hit again and again. Fire broke out in some sections. Systems began to fail. But the Iron Will kept fighting. Captain Tay stood on his bridge, surrounded by smoke and warning lights. His uniform was torn, and blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. But his voice was steady when he gave his next order. All ships focus fire on their command vessel. End this now. The human fleet turned as one. 32 ships aimed at Grun's flagship. 32 ships fired at the same moment. Grun had time for one final thought before his ship exploded. He thought about the distress signal that had brought the humans here. He thought about the Volari screaming for help, and he realized the terrible truth. The humans had not come for conquest or profit. They had come because someone was suffering. They could not look away. That was more frightening than any weapon. The space battle lasted 47 minutes. When it ended, 9 Krath warships were destroyed. The rest fled into deep space, broken and terrified. The human fleet had lost 7 ships, with 4 others badly damaged. But they had one. Lieutenant Yuna looked at the burning debris floating through space. The path to the planet is clear. Tay wiped blood from his eyes. Prepare the ground teams. We are not finished yet. There are still people down there who need our help. On the surface of Sereth Prime, young Myra looked up at the night sky. She could see lights in orbit, but they were different now. The Krath ships were falling, burning like stars as they dropped toward the ground. She did not know what was happening. She did not understand how strangers from across the galaxy could defeat the mighty Krath in less than an hour. But she understood. One thing clearly, someone had finally answered her call, and they were not finished fighting for her yet. The drop pods fell from the sky like metal rain. Inside each pod, human soldiers waited in darkness, feeling the heat of atmospheric entry burn against the outer shell. The temperature inside rose high enough to kill any Valar instantly. For the humans, it was just uncomfortable. Sergeant Beak Jin sat in his pod with his eyes closed. He had done this 100 times before. The crushing pressure, the terrible heat, the violent shaking. It reminded him of training on Earth, where soldiers were pushed to their limits just to see who would break. No. One in his squad had ever broken. The pod slammed into the ground with enough force to crack stone. Jin kicked open the door and rolled out, his weapon ready. Around him, his team did the same. In seconds, 12 human soldiers stood in the ruins of a Valari city, ready for war. Move out, Jin ordered. Find survivors. Kill any Krath who resist. Private Node took his first steps on alien soil. His heart pounded in his chest, and his hands were sweating inside his gloves. This was his first real combat mission. Everything he had trained for came down to this moment. A Krath soldier appeared from behind a broken wall. The alien was tall and covered in dark scales, with 4 arms and teeth like needles. It saw the humans and charged at them with a terrible scream. Day froze for just a moment. The Krath was fast and terrifying. But then Day remembered his training. He remembered what Sergeant Jin had told him about human advantages. The Krath was fast, but Day was faster. He had grown up on a heavy world and his muscles were dense and powerful. He moved to the side, avoiding the attack, and fired his weapon in one smooth motion. The Krath fell and did not get up. Jin appeared beside him. Good work. Stay focused. There are more of them. Across the city, human squads spread out. They moved through streets filled with rubble and bodies. The Valari had been gentle people who had built beautiful things. Now their cities were graves. In the remains of a medical center, Dr. Choi Hannah set up her field hospital. Valari survivors were brought to her, carried gently by human soldiers who had been trained to handle fragile patients. Many of the Valari were injured badly. Some were near death. Hannah worked without rest. Her hands, which were strong enough to crush rock on earth, moved with impossible gentleness as she treated wounds on beings made of glass and light. She had practiced for weeks on the journey here. She knew exactly how much pressure a Valari body could handle. An elderly Valari looked up at her with wonder in his large eyes. "Why?" he asked weakly. "Why did you come?" Hannah did not stop working. "Because you asked for help. But we have nothing to give you. We are broken. We are useless." Hannah finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired but kind. "You are not useless. You are alive. That is enough reason to save you." She returned to her work. "Rest now. You are safe." In the center of the city, the Krath had built a prison camp. Thousands of Valari were held there, waiting to be shipped away to work as slaves in distant worlds. The Krath commander in charge of the camp received word that humans had landed. He gathered his soldiers and made an announcement that he broadcast to the approaching human forces. "Attention, humans. If you attack this camp, we will kill every prisoner. Thousands will die. Turn back now, or their blood will be on your hands." The transmission reached Captain Tay on the Iron Will. He listened carefully, then opened a channel to respond. His voice was cold and quiet. "Every Valari you harm adds another decade to your people's suffering. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not stop. You have one chance to surrender. I suggest you take it." The Krath commander laughed nervously. "You are bluffing. You cannot risk the prisoners." "I am not bluffing," Tay said simply. "And if you hurt even one more innocent person, I will personally make sure you understand the full meaning of human anger." The commander looked at his soldiers. Some of them were already backing away. They had heard stories about what had happened to the fleet in orbit. They had seen Krath warships falling from the sky like burning leaves, before the commander could decide what to do. The walls of the camp exploded inward. Human soldiers poured through the gaps, moving faster than the Krath could track. They did not fire randomly. Each shot was precise and deliberate. Targeting only Krath soldiers while avoiding the prisoners completely, the battle lasted for minutes. When it ended, every Krath in the camp was dead or captured. Not a single Valari prisoner was harmed. Sergeant Jin moved through the camp, looking for survivors who needed immediate help. He heard a small sound coming from a collapsed building nearby. Carefully, he climbed through the rubble until he found the source. A young Valari girl was hiding in a small space between 2 fallen walls. She was thin and dirty, with cracks running through her crystalline skin. When she saw Jin, she screamed in terror. Jin understood. To her, he must look like a monster. He was huge and covered in dark armor, with weapons strapped to his body. She had never seen a human before. Slowly, carefully, he removed his helmet. He showed her his face, which was strange to her, but not cruel. He knelt down, making himself smaller, and spoke in the softest voice he could manage. "My name is Jin. I heard your signal. I came to help you." The girl stared at him with huge eyes. You. You were the ones who came? Yes. You destroyed the Krath ships? Yes. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you do that for us? You do not know us. Jin thought about the question carefully. He thought about his grandmother, who had taught him that strength meant nothing if you did not use it to protect others. He thought about his own daughter back on Earth, who was about the same age as this girl. Because you needed help, he said finally. Because someone should have come sooner. Because that is what humans do. The girl was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out her thin hand toward him. Jin took it gently, more carefully than he had ever held anything in his life. Her hand was cold and fragile, like holding a snowflake. "My name is Mira," she whispered. "Lo, Mira, let me take you somewhere safe." He lifted her carefully and carried her through the ruins toward the medical center. She weighed almost nothing to him. On Earth, he could lift 10 times her weight without trying. But she was the most precious cargo he had ever carried. Around them, the battle continued. Human soldiers fought through the city, clearing out Krath forces building by building. But in that moment, walking through fire and destruction with a child in his arms, Sergeant Jin knew exactly why he had become a soldier. Not to kill, not to conquer, to protect those who could not protect themselves. The battle for Sereth Prime was over. The Krath occupation force had been completely destroyed. Human soldiers now walked through ruined cities, not as conquerors, but as helpers. They carried wounded Valari to medical stations. They distributed food and water to survivors. They cleared rubble and searched for anyone still trapped. The Valari watched them with amazement and confusion. These strange creatures from a distant world had crossed the galaxy to save them. They had fought and died for strangers. And now, instead of claiming victory and leaving, they stayed to help rebuild. Elder Poland, the same Valari who had sent the distress signal, walked slowly through the refugee camp. He was old and tired, and the past weeks had nearly broken him. But he was alive. His people were alive. Because of the humans, he found Captain Kang Tae standing near the edge of the camp, looking up at the sky. The captain's uniform was torn and stained with blood, but his eyes were calm. Poland approached him carefully. "Captain Tae?" Tae turned and bowed his head slightly in respect. "Elder Poland, how are your people?" "Surviving. Thanks to you." Poland's voice shook with emotion. "I do not know how to thank you. We have nothing to offer. We are a broken people with no wealth, no power, no way to repay what you have done." Tae was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke softly. "When you sent that signal, you gave us something valuable. You gave us a chance to be who we want to be. You gave us a chance to help someone who needed it." He looked at the old Valari with gentle eyes. "That is payment enough."
Ow.
Poland did not understand. In his experience, no one did anything without expecting something in return. The galaxy was a cold place where the strong ate the weak. But these humans seemed different. "I have lived many years," Poland said slowly. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species conquer and destroy. But I have never seen anything like your people. You confuse me." Tae almost smiled. "We confuse most species. They cannot understand why we would risk everything for strangers." He paused. "But to us, it is simple. When someone is suffering, you help them. When someone is being hurt, you stop it. That is what it means to be human." Far away in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, an emergency meeting was taking place. Diplomats from dozens of worlds had gathered to discuss what had happened at Sereth Prime. The news had spread. Across the galaxy like fire, a small species from a dangerous planet had crossed 17 light years in 17 days. They had destroyed a Krath occupation fleet in less than an hour. They had liberated an entire world. And they had asked for nothing in return. "This is unprecedented," said a diplomat from the Merchant Union.
Ow.
"No species has ever responded to a distress signal like this. What do the humans want? Territory, resources, political power?" "Nothing," replied another diplomat, his voice confused. "Our intelligence suggests they want nothing. They simply came because someone asked for help." chamber fell silent. This did not make sense. Every species in the galaxy operated on the principle of exchange. You did not give without receiving. You did not sacrifice without gaining. Finally, an elderly counselor spoke. I have studied Earth and its people. They evolved on a world that should have killed them. Their planet has crushed them with gravity, frozen them with ice, burned them with fire, and poisoned them with disease. And yet they survived all of it. He paused. Perhaps that is why they are different. They know what it means to struggle. They know what it means to suffer. And they cannot stand by while others experience the same pain. So they are motivated by emotion. Another diplomat asked. By compassion? Yes, that is ... terrifying. The counselor nodded slowly. It should be. A species motivated by profit can be bought. A species motivated by fear can be threatened. But a species motivated by compassion? They cannot be controlled. They cannot be predicted. They will sacrifice themselves for strangers. They will fight impossible battles for people they have never met. He looked around the chamber. The Krath thought the Valari were helpless. They thought no one would come. They were wrong. In the throne room of the Krath Empire, High Overseer Vorn sat in darkness. He had received the reports from Sereth Prime. He had watched the footage of human ships, tearing through his fleet like it was nothing. He had seen recordings of human soldiers carrying Valari, children to safety with infinite gentleness. His advisor stood nervously nearby. High Overseer, what should we do? Should we send another fleet to Sereth Prime? No, Vorn said quietly. His voice was heavy with something he had never felt before. Fear, but we cannot let this insult stand. The humans have humiliated us. Vorn turned to look at his advisor. Do you understand what we are facing? Those creatures crossed the galaxy because they heard children screaming on a distress signal. They did not know the Valari. They gained nothing from saving them. They simply came because someone was suffering. They are fools, the advisor said. Emotion is weakness. No, Vorn shook his head. Emotion is what makes them dangerous. A soldier who fights for money will retreat when the cost becomes too high. A soldier who fights for conquest will stop when victory seems impossible. But a soldier who fights because he cannot bear to see innocents harmed, he leaned forward. That soldier will never stop. He will keep coming until he is dead or until you are. The advisor was silent. They are not monsters, Vorn continued. They are something far worse. They are kind. And kindness, when it is strong enough, becomes the most dangerous force in the universe. On Sereth Prime, young Myra stood at the entrance of a human medical ship. She was being taken to a refugee station, where she would be cared for until a new home could be found for her. Perhaps she would even go to Earth itself, to live among the strange and wonderful humans who had saved her people. Sergeant Beek Jin had come to see her off. He knelt down to her level, even though she knew now that kneeling was uncomfortable for his species. Humans did it anyway, to seem less frightening to smaller beings. That small act of kindness meant more to her than any weapon. Will I see you again? She asked. Jin smiled gently. If you ever need me, just call. We always answer. Mira looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised both of them. She stepped forward and hugged him, wrapping her thin arms around his massive frame. Jin froze for just a second, afraid of hurting her. Then, very carefully, he hugged her back. Thank you, she whispered. For coming, thank you, he replied. For holding on. 6 months later, a new signal went out from a distant world. Another species, another tragedy, another cry for help. The signal was weak and desperate. Barely a whisper across the void, it reached Earth, and within hours, the fleet began to mobilize again. Because that was what humans did. When someone was suffering, they came. When someone needed help, they answered, no matter how far, no matter how dangerous, no matter what the cost. Across the galaxy, civilizations learned a new truth. Humanity was not to be feared because they were strong. They were to be feared because they cared. Because when the weak cried out, when the innocent suffered, when empires thought themselves untouchable, The Deathworlders came, and they never came quietly. They came with fury. They came with fire. They came with a compassion so fierce that tyrants trembled at the thought of it. Because in the end, the most dangerous thing in the universe was not a weapon or a fleet, or an army. It was a species that simply could not look away from suffering, and humanity would never look away.